the first time that we are doing this together as a congregation, having someone be my guest that I lead a conversation with. And it turns out it's Ray's first time doing something similar in a church, speaking about his freedom from religion organization. So I sense a certain amount of irony in that, but I feel that he is also among people who will welcome his message. So welcome, Ray. We're going to share our microphone back and forth. We will try not to fight over the microphone too much, but I sense we both like to chat a bit. Ray, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm not going to talk a lot about myself. What do you think about that? My name is Ray Vensel. I'm the president of the Maine chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And I'm just as surprised by that as a lot of people are who know me. I've never been known as a joiner. And it happened kind of quickly where I heard or I saw a regular article. Some of you may have seen it, an article in the Sentinel written by Tom Waddell. He was the previous president of the chapter. And he wrote an article that really spoke to me, and I started paying attention to what he was saying. The column was called "In Reason We Trust." So I joined. I liked the sound of what the chapter was trying to do. I liked its work. And 1 month I was vice president. Then I became president. I'm still not sure how that happened. I'm still learning the job, but it has been an education and it has been quite a ride. The people in the chapter feel very, very strongly about the work we do. Just to sum it up, separation of state and church, as you mentioned earlier. Keep religious principles out of government, because that is forcing a whole set of religious principles by a specific group of people on everybody else. State-sponsored religion. Sounds familiar, and would rather not go in that direction.
What is the mission of freedom from religion?
Well, right now we're working on our first strategic plan. The chapter's been growing quite a bit lately. We can only speculate why. And part of doing that is the bureaucrats speak of having a vision and a mission statement. To kind of summarize and mush them both together, we want to see a world that is a secular world that allows people to believe what they want to believe or not, and not be told what they can believe or can't. That's about all I could say about that. That's that simple.
So I think everyone here knows when we're enthusiastic about something, we will join the committee or the organization. And then we get the ask, will you chair this? Will you take the lead in this? And that's all well and good, but we still have the choice to say yes. What motivated you personally to say yes to this?
It's tempting to make a joke here about how much must you be into pain? Because there's a certain perception of the group that it is anti-religion, which it is not. And because of that, there are certain perceptions that we have to fight against fairly often. So it's easy to joke about, well, I must really be into pain. I'm not. But I saw firsthand some of the hypocrisies in one particular church where I grew up. I was, and I do use the past tense, an extremely faithful Lutheran, baptized, confirmed, president of the Luther League, sitting in the front row every week without the book, didn't need the book. But I saw that no matter how beautiful I may have thought the whole structure was, the people who were doing it were people with all the weaknesses as well as the strengths that that entails. And I realized that having a set of religious principles layered on to people's lives from the outside, while I didn't see it as extreme as a lot of people do nowadays, I saw it. And I thought, maybe I can help. I thought maybe I would just be able to warm up a seat somewhere and maybe that would help. And it does. People joining us right now who are listening, reading, voting. And did I mention voting? That is one of the things we're going to be doing at the Common Ground Fair is registering people to vote. But I don't mean to kind of go off the path here. You asked what got me involved or what motivated me. And just a sense of right, I think. It is just not right to force a set of religious principles on people who either have different ones or don't want to follow any at all. And as I say in my version of the column, as you may read if it ever gets published, the whole concept of fairness seems to be a controversial topic somehow. And I'm hoping I can help in some way to fix that.
I can imagine there's limitless issues that your organization might be tasked with. Do you have a few primary goals that you focus on?
Definitely. This goes back to the strategic plan that I mentioned before and the mission statement and the vision statement and all the other stuff. If you look at the mandate for leadership that's gotten so much attention lately, finally, from what's called Project 2025, 30 chapters worth of, I'll editorialize just a bit, horrifying stuff. That's too much for one group. So we've set on a couple of priorities. Focus on your priorities and do that. So one priority is support for women's rights, especially reproductive rights. The second priority is supporting our friends in the LGBTQIA+ community and their rights, and supporting public education. With a fourth kind of thread, common denominator that runs through all three of those, which is Christian nationalism. And I'm watching the clock. Don't get me started. As those who are close to me know, I'm always having to keep a tight rein on this. Because I mean, if that's not North Korea speak, I don't know what is. So those are our priorities. And we try to support them by the column, the monthly column in the paper, by having a table at, for example, every weekend at Pride Month in one town or another all through Maine. table at the Common Ground Fair coming up this week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 9 to 6 on Friday, Saturday, 9 to 5 on Sunday. And various other, well, and trying to register people to vote. It may be the proverbial drop in the bucket as far as our organization is concerned, but every bit can help. Look what just recently happened in the state legislature when we had a potential constitutional amendment voted down because it fell short by 2 Senate votes. If only one vote had changed and another one had been present instead of absent, it would have been different. So one vote does matter. So even if we only register one person, we're good with that. But those are our priorities, and that's what we're trying to focus on. This coming Friday, I'll also be giving a talk at the Common Ground Fair, specifically about Project 2025. The title of it may seem a little pretentious. I really don't mean it to be, but the real meaning of Project 2025, it's not in the specifics. It's in the fact that this is not the first one. It won't be the last, and it's already starting. Spoiler alert, that's what I'll be talking about.
So it seems like common sense that we would have separation of church and state. It's in the Constitution to indicate such. Yet there's millions of us here in the United States, so we'll talk about the United States. Many who have deeply held religious beliefs or deeply held spiritual beliefs that look an awful lot like religious beliefs. How does one separate that when they go into the polls to vote, or if they're if they're a lawmaker and they're about to cast a decision that's going to impact their constituents and impact so many people? How is it actually possible for one to set down their faith or their belief system in such a way that you're asking them to?
Yes. Would you like me to expand on that? All right. And it's because we try to separate the 2 words, politics versus government. Separating the attitudes in politics and government, those are 2 entirely different things. Government is laying on of laws that everyone must follow. Politics is a messy business, sometimes dirty business, of a mix of the people I mentioned before, human beings. You can't possibly expect them to separate out their personal beliefs. And we're not against that. What we are against, for example, was it last April, I think? A representative in the state legislature named Lemelin spoke against a particular law that expanded rights for a group of people who don't have enough. And his language was extremely extreme and extremely religious, saying the bill was written by Lucifer himself, for example, and going on to categorize the proposed law as being somehow the work of the devil and insulting to God himself. I think he did say himself. And finishing with a statement that basically equated equality with the devil's work. Now, there's a rule in the state legislature that says you cannot question the motives of other people. And boy, if that doesn't question the motives of your opponents, I don't know what does. Process it inside all you like. But in government, talk about what is fair, what works, what evils are being corrected, what people are being included. So we believe you can separate it from government, and it's also a, how to put that? It also has the added convenience of being constitutional. It says right in the Constitution. Now, people who argue against it have a tendency to say, well, it's not literally in the Constitution, and sort of true. But God is never mentioned in the Constitution, and there are 3 places that clearly separate religion from government. So even if it doesn't use the phrase wall of separation, there's clearly a separation there. So let's do that.
Does anyone here have a question that they would like to ask? Looks like there's going to be a few.
Good morning. I'm Karen Kuziak. I'm a member of the congregation. I was interested to hear that one of your 3 major focuses is public education. And I'm wondering what activities you engage in to support public education.
I'm trying to remember the exact number because I don't like to either exaggerate or be wrong, but I'm just as human as the next person. We provide testimony down in Augusta for or against certain bills that are related to education. We also include the whole topic in our monthly column. And we try to give talks, presentations to support public education in general and to keep the separation there. Now, clearly what's the direction we're going in. We do have an effort that we're putting together. Some people might compare it to Don Quixote. Some people might compare it to Ahab. I don't know. But what we would like to do is have the state investigate the cost of actually funding properly public education, as opposed to this whole Rube Goldbergian structure that seems to change every year about how to take away our public funds and put it into private schooling of all types. We tried to get that as a platform in the Democratic Party's platform this year. Didn't happen. We'll still push it this coming fall.
Since our values are largely derived from our Judeo-Christian heritage, how do you truly separate government from religion?
I should have a pat answer to that, but I don't. I try to avoid pat answers. One thing I can always tell is if somebody's working through a set of talking points. Now, I could go through a litany of this is how you do it, but I mean, what we're talking about here is not necessarily a valueless system, but the phrase Judeo-Christian values opens up a whole different rhetorical can of worms, which is why I kind of hesitated, because that's a very difficult conversation to have. Judeo-Christian principles, I'm not exactly sure how you would separate them from just what are regular good ideas. You know, is it a Judeo-Christian value not to commit murder? No, it just, in terms of a civilized society, that sounds like a pretty good idea. So it's difficult to separate those concepts out from just common sense. But when you get into the specifics of a particular religion, for example, an attempt to declare Sundays as a Sabbath day, that is the day when businesses must shut down, when no government offices shall do business, whatever, fill in the gaps there. That honors one Sabbath, not anyone else's. So you are telling the rest of the people who aren't Judeo-Christian, your beliefs don't count, which is completely disrespectful. I would even say rude. I'm not sure if I'm getting really close to what the core of your question is, though, because separating Judeo-Christian is difficult because until roughly the mid-50s, there was no such phrase. So it's tough to get away from the propaganda of that. But the way we discuss separating it out is to have a discussion with everyone. Someone might feel very strongly, Representative Lemelin for one, who even afterward, the town sign that used to say, welcome to, oh dear, I forgot the name of the town. Oh well. Welcome to town name here, and now says Jesus saves. That, like it or not, maybe it does acknowledge a large percentage of people in the population, but there is a perception there that another large percentage isn't included. We ran into that ourselves because you may have seen us in the news 2 years ago from the town of Bucksport. If you heard anything about a disagreement over a non-Christian display next to a nativity scene, that was us. And thanks to that, there's a permit system of having all kinds of different viewpoints displayed there. And we took quick advantage of that last year. It's a step in the right direction. Is that close or? Oh, well, all right.
Beth had a question.
I want to say I'm very much in favor of what your organization does. And I was looking into it on the website, and this is maybe more of a comment. There were some example, what do you call them? Billboards on the website that I think could put people off. You know, the big thing that says, there is no afterlife, enjoy life now, paid for by FFRF, right? And the good news is there is no God, or the good news is there is no hell. You know, I actually probably agree with all of those things, but do you think that those sorts of things put off people from being open to what you are, the more important things you're saying?
Probably, yeah. The national organization, if you just see ffrf.org, that's the national group. And we are the main chapter. The national group is very much focused on atheism. And one of the co-presidents has built an entire career out of atheist-based music and books, and he's actually very witty about doing it. The main chapter is a little more inclusive. And I mean, there are some members who are faithful churchgoers. They just want to see that separation. Those billboards probably do put off some people, but they sure do get people's attention. When you said billboards, I thought you were going to mention the billboards that we helped with, not in Maine. We helped towards putting up billboards encouraging people to vote in 7 swing states across the country. That's more like what we try to do here. I can hear you, and I'll repeat it.
Are there some of your organization in the states that have, I guess now they mandated that the commandments are in schools? And what are they doing about that?
Good idea, Linda. Walk up to a bear and poke it with a stick. That was most recently, that was part of a package down in Louisiana where they passed a package of 18 bills. All of them is similar to this. And they all do the same type of work. Mandating 10 Commandments, for example. Interesting and hopefully amusing footnote to that. After all the fuss and feathers, if you looked at the 10 Commandments that actually did get displayed, they're not in the Bible. That version is not there. And the version is of the 10 Commandments that was used, I forget if it was Louisiana, but one of the states, was what was used in Pennsylvania back in the, I think, early 70s. A different Supreme Court decision where they said you can display 10 Commandments on public property. And as it turned out, that version was based on the promotional materials for Charlton Heston's movie. I don't know what made them choose that. We can speculate and make all kinds of jokes about it, but that's the fact that they used that version. And that's the suggested wording, I believe, in the Louisiana package. They had other laws as well that are equally horrifying. And it's another symptom of the structures that support what I mentioned before, Project 2025, Mandate for Leadership, but also kind of an introductory project that started in 2016-ish called Project Blitz, where they just flooded state legislatures with a set of written bills that here's something you can put in. Most of the clerical work was done, and a lot of these got passed just by themselves. There's not a lot we here in Maine can do about Louisiana, except hope. I'm still hopeful. And here, we're watching pretty closely. And while there are people in the state who are members of the groups that are trying to push these things through, so far, if we just call attention to them, they get voted down. So, I mean, if you look at the numbers, look at the polls, if everyone's registered to vote, and if everyone votes, we win. So let's do that.
There's one more question.
I'm Claire Prutnicki. I'm looking while you're talking at the things around the room, the different versions of do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And we have, I mean, everything from Islam to pagan to Wiccan and everything, and Christian. And it makes me think rather than shut everything down, having a multiplicity of things acknowledged, not in the laws, but, as if you're going to display the 10 Commandments and also display, things from other religions that are things you'd like people to. And so it makes me wonder, what was the alternate display next to the nativity scene that you put in?
The alternate display was something called Solstice, the reason for the season. Yeah, that was us.
Well, we are really out of time. I know our clock is a little fast up there, but we knew this conversation would go very quickly. Oh, we have one more. Okay.
I'm a member of the DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution, where we do say the Lord's Prayer. So this has gotten me all riled up because I don't know what to do. But anyway, we're sponsoring on Tuesday, the 17th at the Winslow Town Hall, which may be another problem, a bell ringing ceremony to ring in the Constitution Week, which begins on the 17th. And there are some posters around, and it's to support this Constitution because I can't speak for everybody, but to me, that's the basis of just about everything. But I'd like to learn more about it. Thank you.
What is the website that people can go to find out more?
Funny you should ask. We just finished the first stage in revamping our website. So it actually looks like it was designed in the 20th century. So we're getting there. It's ffrfmaine, as in the state.org. And it's there where you can join the national group, join us, make a donation. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that at least once. And samples of our columns, links to videos, including one documentary that will be the subject of our radio show once that comes together, where we'll be talking about these things over the air and hoping to encourage conversation and exposure. But the website, once again, ffrfmaine.org.
And I have one. Yeah, I'm going to ask it. So when I think about freedom from religion, and there are certain religions that we definitely want to unstaple from influence. And then I think about who's showing up to rallies, who among my colleagues, at least, who are vocal on social media, who are in 100% agreement with what you are doing. Do you want them to be silent as well?
I'm not sure what you mean by.
They're 100% in support of LGBTQIA rights. They are 100% in support of women's rights and want legislation to be written to support women's autonomy. And they're very vocal about it. They, my colleagues are in front of the State House wearing their stoles and their collars, and they're writing columns about this. And they're influential because of their leadership positions in their communities. But they're using their religious influence. How do you feel about that?
My nuanced and detailed response is that it depends. But I think mostly, at first when you were talking about that, I thought you meant, for example, if you were to show up and say, this is what I believe, this is what I think is the right thing to do, fine. I mean, that's democracy, fine. But if you were to stand up there and tell everyone in this room, vote for candidate X because that is, I would, and the chapter would be against that for two reasons. One, you're telling people what to do We're a little bit against that anyway. But second, it has the added benefit of being, well, if not to use too strong a word, illegal. You're not supposed to do that. But outside of this context, you giving testimony in Augusta, fine. Giving speeches, fine. We're not against hearing from everybody. It's just the whole idea of forcing those opinions on people who don't hold them, forcing them. Expression is fine, action, not so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You did lead an invocation, though, at the State House. Would you like to close out our service today with that invocation?
I brought a copy just in case. Brief story behind this. I ran into a bit of controversy because members of the state legislature jumped to conclusions based on the name of the group. Just assumed that we were a bunch of wild-eyed, bomb-throwing atheists who want to burn all the churches down. Some of us maybe, but that's not the point of the group. So this was the invocation I gave. From the name of my group, you might expect me to ask you to step outside of your usual demonstrations of faith. You would be wrong. However you understand your place in the world, acknowledge it. That's religious freedom. And we support everyone's religious freedom by working for the separation of state and church. The Maine Senate convenes at the behest of a community of strongly held views, often strongly expressed. You sacrifice much for us. So does your staff, who show goodwill toward your constituents and high energy in support of your efforts. They deserve our thanks. And you work out of a desire to serve, and it's often thankless. So thank you. It can be difficult to change our minds, even a little, let alone admit to being wrong. But sometimes minds have to change so that we can grow. This is progress. We are imperfect humans who often need help, and an invocation is the act of not. Well, two things happened there. One is I very vainly tried to go without my glasses. And two is I get choked up every single time I do this. And an invocation is the act of asking for it. So I ask for help from whatever source supports your world, whether it be God, Jehovah, Allah, Krishna, Buddha, or all that is best in our fellow humans. If my words can invoke anything, may it be that we use evidence and reason to make decisions, that we listen carefully to those with whom we disagree, and that we strive for an environment where motives are known to be sincere and honorable. May we remember those who have suffered and do what we can to help them. May we treat others as we wish to be treated. May we have open minds in our conversations, debates, and yes, our arguments. May we remain tolerant of each other, regardless of differences in lifestyles, identities, or religious or non-religious beliefs. And may the result of your work help to build a better Maine. Amen, and thank you.